Let's talk about Japanese Pokemon cards. You and I are both heavily into like the Japanese Pokemon card market. We both buy and grade and sell and kind of target that specific side of, the specific language because of all the reasons that you said before. Better print quality, usually better textures. They tend to grade better, I would say overall. It's a little easier. Acquiring it is a
Agree.
little more difficult, but the grading and the selling and stuff is probably maybe a little bit easier to get those higher grades and the potential profit margins. Maybe not right now because right now it's pretty iffy, but you do a lot more in Japanese sealed than I do. I've just recently started picking up a case here and there of a set that I feel like is really cheap. And right now,
Yeah.
as we can see, the prices on modern sealed are, I don't know if they've stopped coming down or not. Shiny Treasure EX is almost in the 20s now. I think I bought a case at like 31 a piece, which is insane for a specialty set. Lots of other sets in the 30s.
Japanese sealed right now is like probably the worst thing that you could choose to sell casually, or like unless you have, like Pokey does a really good job of like being upfront. Like he buys a high quantity to get
Right.
as best price he can. You can't just like buy a case and hope to flip a case. Like, I mean, you could, but time, effort, energy, it's not worth it.
No, yeah.
So I
Flipping,
don't flip a lot of sealed
yeah.
stuff.
Flipping sealed is definitely not the play right now, especially with
Yeah.
prices continuing to do whatever they're doing. What do you think is happening there? Like, why is everything getting so cheap? Do you think it's less people interested? You think we're siphoning off some interest right now, or are they just printing like a metric shitload right now in Japan? What is your like best guess? Obviously we don't know. We don't have a line into Japanese Pokemon, company, but what do you think?
Nobody freaking knows. Anyone who says he knows has no idea. Unless Mr. John Pokemon-san, whoever's leading that thing tells us what's going on. Or there's distributors who, for some reason, they want to tell us whatever the quantity is that they're selling or distributing or that kind of thing. Like, everyone's guessing. I think, though, you can kind of correlate what's happened in the past and like what you're seeing from seller to seller, like in different platforms. Like, you can assume what's going on. I think there's a lot of it printed, and that's cool. That's awesome. That's great for now and people who want to
Yeah,
collect, people
super
who want to
accessible.
rip.
Yeah.
Like, it is a great time to buy Japanese sealed. There's just so much of it. The access level is like unprecedented. I'm not over exaggerating. Like, before, you would Google Pokemon Japanese booster box and hopefully find a site. Back then, it was like Plaza Japan, Nin Game, random site, Okini Land.
Yeah.
These sites still exist. Like, you could do that then, and there weren't that many options. Now, like, I can go to TikTok and buy a $30 box of shiny treasure. What I think is going on as part of this, and why I'm a little weary, why do English sellers have access to all this product? That's the part that's like, yo, what's going on here? I followed a lot of the sealed releases going back to Matchless Fighters slash Battle Styles.
Hmm.
And I'd buy from one or two different sources. And like, this is not like me saying this is what was going on in the market. This is what I experienced, right? And they would tell me the price at release, and then they would tell me the price 2 weeks after release, and they also tell me like what quantity I could order before and what quantity I could order after. And I wasn't buying like cases and cases, but I would buy anywhere between like 2 and 20 boxes. Every set that would happen. Every set that would happen. And then comes Lost Abyss. I think Lost Abyss was the first kind of like, what is going on here? Price spiked, the quantities I could get lowered from both two or three of the people I talked to. I'm like, okay, that probably means because demand's up. That makes sense. Incandescent Arcana comes out. Same thing with that set. Limited quantity. It's like $80, $100 a box right out the gate. That's kind of weird. Paradigm Trigger comes out, has a Lugia in it.
Yeah.
And Paradigm Trigger, I really wanted. I think out of the gate it was like 65, 70. It was high. Like, still a little high. So I walk away from that experience like, okay, I guess demand's picking up. They're not reprinting. This is good for people who are holding. It's good for people like me who have some. Cool, that's what's going on. Several months go by, and then we fast forward to when TikTok started selling product. The thing that I realized about the Japanese market is, how is it that these US based sellers, and there's like three or four big TikTok shops, some of these guys have access to thousands of boxes of Paradigm Trigger. And so I'm trying to like understand, at release, it was really hard to get this box at like a decent price. Fast forward to a TikTok shop, these guys have thousands of boxes at a price that's about the same price, if not cheaper. And that's when I realized, like, hey, dude, this whole Japanese market, what people have access to, this is an unfair game. What's happening is like a lot of the inventory, it's not distributed evenly. And it likely comes from the same key stakeholders in Japan, and they're just selling it to different people, in Japan and then across the US.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that people don't realize is Japanese is highly manipulated.
Oh
It's
yeah. I
manipulated by
mean,
LGSs,
the buy lists were insane for some of
buy
those
lists.
cards, and they were absolutely not buying those cards for those insane like prices that they
Dude,
were putting on.
well, they might have purchased a few, but they were willing to keep up a lot of those buy prices for like weeks at a time.
Yeah.
So, I've been to Japan 4 times. Twice I went to look at cards. You go into the stores and like some of the buy prices are legit. Do they keep them up and actually buy in mass quantities? Like no one really knows, right?
Yeah.
But the signal for a lot of people is to look at Dragon Star and Magipoki and they say, oh, if those guys are paying 100, then my box must be worth 130.
Right.
So that's kind of how it works. Like it would be the same thing in the US if the LGS is banded together and say like, "Hey, we're going to pay $150 for the 151 Charizard." Nobody posts less than that. Everyone would think the card is worth like $200,
Yeah.
right?
Because surprisingly,
So,
like there are a lot of card stores, but they're all like I'm sure you know, if you go to a
yeah.
particular part of Japan, like you can go to Shibuya, all the card stores are on one block. You go to, the different parts of Japan, Akihabara, all in like a half block radius of each other. Like
Yeah.
they're all really, so it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of manipulation happening. They're all right next to each other. They're all probably talking to each other. They're all probably putting out buy lists together and doing all. It wouldn't surprise me. Not that it for sure happens and it's all malicious, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some communication happening there between stores.
Whether or not they're like colluding or not, I think larger point for people to realize is we are playing their game. What they decide to do in their market affects us. What we decide to do here doesn't affect them. Like it doesn't go both ways, right? And it's
Right.
not it's not a fair game. So if you play around with Japanese supply and you have access to this stuff, like it's not the same situation as an LGS here having access to a distributor like Central Hobby or whatever and buying product from them. That's just like an overarching thing to keep in mind. It's not a fair game. Everything's manipulated. I do think there's a lot of product that's in circulation now. I also think there's a lot more people buying who are not buying for the intent of collecting or ripping.
Right. For sure.
And part of that, and I look at this probably once a week. If you just look at like the PSA 10 prices for cards in a lot of the recent sets for Japanese, for example, the 151 Charizard has not changed in price since this
Yeah.
reprint
Not really.
announcement.
It's like 160, 165, 170. It's like
No, it's
right
like 125, 130 on Sneaker Dunk and Mercari, if
on a
not
10.
cheaper. Yeah, and 10.
Is that
And
it? Oh, that Japan.
yeah, and
Okay.
recent solds and quantity of sold. So like something's off in that you would expect if people really wanted a lot of these modern Japanese sets, yes, sealed sales should go up, but singles and graded you would expect to also go up or correlate strongly up as well. And it's not really what I've been seeing.
Well, wouldn't you expect them to go down because there would be more of a supply hitting the market of the sealeds or of the singles like being ripped?
Yes, but also for like the top hits typically are not going to take a dip. Like Lugia V for whatever reason still I've been buying some of them. They were like 250 to 310 bucks still.
No.
And Paradigm Trigger as a booster box selling for like 60 bucks, 65 bucks on certain websites. I was looking at Terapeak earlier. You can go to like page 5 or 6 and Paradigm Trigger doesn't even show up.
Do you think that interest in these sets is waning right now because we've had lackluster set after lackluster set after lackluster set after because really for Scarlet and Violet, maybe I'm pessimistic about this. I would say we've had like one really good set, one okay set, and then a bunch of like meh sets. We haven't seen like that, everyone's like, "Oh, the second half of Scarlet and Violet's going to be a banger." And it's like, "Where is it?" Mask of Change doesn't look like it's going to start the bangers. Do you think the
Sales have
interest
been
right
waning.
now is waning and that with the injection of all this more product into the market, do you think the combination of that is forcing prices down?
No, I think it's actually more related to there just being a lot of it and demand can't keep up with the amount of supply, so everyone's just undercutting each other. I mean, sorry, there's probably some lack of interest in some of these sets, right? Like that makes sense. But I think it's more so related to there's way more access to supply. There's way more supply out there. Like Shiny Treasure being $28 or whatever, that's like really good if you want to buy 4 years ago when it was a different climate. Now it's like, do you really want a $30 box of something you know everyone has? It's getting cheaper and you can't figure out like how much of it actually exists.
I think that some people would
So
say they would,
time and
look
blah blah
at
blah.
the other specialty sets, and
Yeah.
VMAX Climax was heavily printed, V-Star Universe was heavily printed, and they're
Yes.
over $100 and
Oh, they were.
$60 a
Yeah.
box or whatever, and it's like,
Fair comparison. But the thing that is different from every single one of those boxes is the time variable that it takes to appreciate. When VMAX Climax was out, I can tell you because I was there, it's nothing like how what we're going through with Shiny Treasure today in terms of who's selling it, the where you can get it, and the price. It never went down to $28 a box. I think it was at like retail, maybe a little bit less.
no.
Like people can't get rid of Shiny Treasure. It's just everywhere. Yes, those points are true. However, the time variable that's part of that equation, it's a very relative variable based on like between now and then when we think it's going to double and triple. Because I'm pretty sure that time frame is not going to be the same.
You think it'll
Shiny
take
Star V, by the
longer
way,
because there's
nobody
more of it?
wants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shiny Star V, by the way, is like is like at $60 or $70 a box. No one wants it because no one's paying the waifu premium anymore. So RAP Marnie and Shiny Fates in English just kind of did what man. So
Yeah.
that's the one too. Like people will call out VMAX Climax and they'll call out V Star Universe, which V Star Universe is like 50s now.
Yeah.
Low
Yeah.
60s, but they won't call out like Shiny Star V, which has been out for almost 4 years. It was 150 a box, but now it's like less than some of them. I think people like to conveniently point at like, well, like remember then, like how much supply and like it's gonna go up. You have to look at like what's going on now. You can't look at what's going on then and use that for justification of what you want to do now, like solely. Like you got to be really careful drawing comparisons there because the
I
time
don't
to
know
sell
if
was
you
then.
heard, Ernie, but modern sealed always goes up. I don't know if you.
English on the sealed always goes up. That is very true. Japanese sealed does go up. However, if you look at the demand for older sets and how many boxes sell, it's not like Evolving Skies. Like, oh, there's hundreds of boxes of like Sword and Shield based Japanese that are selling. You'll see like one sell in like a quarter in like 3 months.
Well, I think
It's
it's
not the same.
difficult, like when you can buy literally the biggest hit for at or less than what the box is worth. It's like, why would you buy a box then? Like if I can buy a Charizard shiny
Yeah.
VMAX for $40, like I did today, if that box is literally 60 some dollars right now or $70, why would I buy the box if I can buy two of the big hit Charizards for the same amount of money?
99% of the cards in Black White English are are worth like a few dollars.
Well, that's because
No
black.
one wants.
That's because nobody was like in the hobby during black and white. Like it was a much less
Sure.
popular
That
phase, and
that
so they
may be
printed a
one of
lot
the
less,
reasons,
right?
right? But what I'm pointing to is that like sealed goes up for the novelty of like a sealed product that is in low circulation. The more that's opened, there's less available, right? Like it will always go down. And so there are booster boxes of black and white sets, like Noble Victories is like kind of a meme, Merging Powers. They go for like $1, $2, and $3,000. The highest cards in those sets in a PSA 10 go for like a few hundred, if that.
Yeah,
People are willing to pay a premium on older stuff that when you don't open it, the novelty of it being like a sealed booster box,
yeah,
that's just gonna go up over time because there's just less of it. The PSA 10 price and like the top hit doesn't have to like be related to in any way to the price of the sealed product, sealed box.
yeah. That's so weird to me though, especially with this stuff that's printed so much. Like with Evolving Skies, for
Yeah.
instance, it's like I understand if you want to buy like an Evolving Skies booster box to have in your booster box like collection, but
Yeah.
if you buy that to rip right now, in my opinion, you're an idiot. Like you can buy an
You
Umbreon
were
VMAX
also an
for the
idiot then, by
same
the way.
price. Like you're opening it for a card that you can literally buy for the same price you're buying the box for. Like it
You're
doesn't
also
make any
an idiot
sense.
then for ripping Evolving Skies. It is seriously the most overrated ripping experience that exists.
So, have you seen? This is something that I saw when I was looking today that I thought was interesting. Is that a lot of the modern singles? So, typically, I'm not buying modern, especially right now, if I don't have a coupon, because there is like right now modern singles, maybe not across the board, but they're coming down. I like buying them on a coupon because it gives me a little more wiggle room. Because if it is going to come
Yeah.
down, 20% or whatever, then I have a little bit more space for what I think my expected like profit margin should be. So that's what I'm doing right now. But it's interesting to see. So I was buying a lot of those 25th Charizards, obviously the Japanese ones. And so some of those didn't work out for me though. I lost money on some of those because I bought them at 130, 140, and
Oof.
they came down in PSA 10 to like that 180 mark. You couldn't put them through the vault anymore, so you were kind of taking a hit on them. But one thing that I have found to be interesting is as time has continued, the cards that I bought before at a particular price have come down. But the PSA 10 price has kind of equally come down. It's not coming down at like a faster or slower pace. It's kind of coming down at the same pace. So you have like this weird window where you got to get the card in, you got to send it off, you got to sell it before it comes down enough that your profit margin disappears. But it seems like at least those profit percentage is kind of staying similar, even though it's kind of decreasing as the cards and the graded version decreases. Have you seen that too?
I think part of it's like shouldn't be a secret. It's really easy to flip Japanese PSAs 10 guys. Like,
Well,
more
and
people are getting into it, and I think there's just more of it being done, and so that's just causing that uniform decrease in price.
I think the nines are definitely like if you get a nine, you're
Oh
losing
my
money or
god,
breaking even, basically.
so
You're
sad.
lucky if you break even. But the tens, like I don't know why, but they're pretty easy to get with Japanese, and they're still holding like a similar percentage premium, even with the cards coming down in price, which is good.
I just looked up on Sneaker Dunk. You can get one of those in a 10, that Zara the 25th, for like 125, 130 bucks.
That's a weird thing too. I want to ask you about. So if you've been on buyee in the last
Yeah.
6 months, there has definitely been a massive influx of PSA cards on buyee.
Uh-huh.
Whenever I look now, it's like half the
Yeah.
listings are
Yeah.
PSA 10s. But it's crazy to me to see the difference between what's selling in PSA 10 on eBay in the US and what's it's selling because I saw those too. I bought some of those. The 25th anniversary Zard in a 10 was like 190 and 20% off coupon, and then I'd send them to the vault for 250, and it was a easy like 50, 60, 70 bucks right there because it's that arbitrage. They're selling way less in Japan for PSA 10s than they are on eBay. It's super weird. And I know Ibex, I feel like we talked about it once, and he wasn't sure if they don't like the grading standards of PSA, if they're not harsh enough for them.
I think it's like as simple as like they cannot absorb the amount of inventory that exists. When I hear stuff like they don't like PSA or like Japanese think this, like one, no one really knows. Two, I just think of it as like a simple, very simple formula. If the demand for these things is not higher or meets the amount of inventory, price goes down. And so you can interpret whatever about what that means about the prices, but that's just like how economics for this stuff works. And I don't think it's they don't like this stuff. I just don't think there's enough buyers for that stuff in market to justify, that price going up over time.
So it's probably a mixture of a lot of graded cards hitting a market that's maybe not maybe accepting or not as used to collecting like a graded like because I don't ARS
Yeah,
is pretty
I don't know
new.
about that.
Like
I
graded,
mean, that'd be true, but
like how new are graded cards to that market versus the 20 years that they've been in America, So
it's newer. But I also like don't I believe some of that stuff, but I try not to like think it's true because at the end of the day, like we're just guessing.
it's speculation, yeah,
And
for sure. Nick actually posted in the chat. He said that one of the issues is that card shops
yeah,
won't give you the full price for tens quite often because it's not a quote unquote true 10. That has somewhat translated to the online market, many reasons. That's pretty interesting if card shops would pay like different prices based on which. Well, I mean that kind of makes sense though. I'm sure if you go into a card shop with a CGC card, you probably get less quoted to you than a PSA equivalent. That's just how the markets work, I guess. But it's
one thing
interesting to
I've
yeah.
learned, or I think is true, is BGS tens typically go for more in Japan.
Well, they're definitely harder to
I
get.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely hard to get. I can see like some type of narrative around like, well, if it's not a true PSA 10, it definitely won't be a BGS 10, and so they're not willing to pay, you know, top price because they know it's not really worth that. But I think in like the Western market, English market, dude, if it's like at least decent, most people don't care about the card; they care about the grade.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah,
If you don't like it, flip it to someone who does, who thinks that way. Because
it makes
you
for
know,
great arbitrage opportunity. That's for sure. The different thoughts behind the different companies. Like if they're less on PSA and PSA sells for cheaper over there, obviously here everyone only cares about PSA 10, so I will happily buy the Japanese PSA 10s and sell them to the English market. If you guys enjoyed this style of video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button down below. Make sure to also subscribe to @EarnCollects on YouTube. It was a great conversation we had together about a multitude of different topics, and there will be a couple more videos from that conversation coming out here soon. But if you want to see the full unedited chat that we had, you can become a member today for just $1.99 a month.